Hi, I'm Monica, and I am going to be talking about the movie The Public Enemy, which was directed by William Wellman and made in 1931. So it was produced and distributed by Warner Brothers. It had James Cagney, Warlow, Edward Woods, Donald Cook, and Joan Blondell, which are all very great actors and actresses at that time. And so this is 1931, so this is in the 30s, so we do have to remember that Prohibition was in effect. And 2 years later, it actually became ineffective. So, Prohibition in the United States was a nationwide ban on alcohol, so you couldn't produce it, import it, transport it, or even sell it from 1920 to 1933. So the film is about a young man who just gets, caught up in this world of crime and in the Prohibition era in the U.S. And the screenplay is actually based on an unpublished novel called Beer and Blood, which were actually written by two former newspapermen, John Bright and Bubic Glassman, who actually had witnessed some of Al Capone's gang rivalries in Chicago. So the youngsters in 1900s Chicago were Irish Americans, who was James Cagney, who played Tom Powers, who had a lifelong friend named Matt Doyle, who was Edward Woods, and they pretty much engaged in like petty theft. I mean, they were selling the stuff that they stole and selling their stuff to Putty Nose, who was Murray Kinnell. And Putty Nose pretty much tells them to join a gang um, on this fur warehouse robbery. And so that goes a little south, mainly because Tom goes a little crazy, and I think this is also Tom's first time where he actually really gets engaged with the gang and really figures out that things are getting serious, people are getting killed. Um, Theft is a little more serious than just like stealing a few things from the store, because they're actually doing some like high or big robberies, if that makes any sense. Um, and Tom pretty much believes that he figures out he's going deep into the situation with Putty Nose. And he tries to go to Putty Nose for help and then realizes that he's actually abandoned him and left town. And so we also have to deal with family situations as well. So Tom actually has an older brother named Mike Powers. Donald Cook is who plays Mike Powers. Um, and Mike tries to get Tom to just give up on the crime, to, get out of the gang as much as possible. But Tom also keeps his activities secret from his mother. Um, and so when this is also the time when World War One also was happening, so that was in 1917. Tom's older brother Mike goes into the Marines. And so in 1920, when Prohibition was about to go in effect, Patty Ryan, who Robert Emmett Connor plays, gets Tom and Matt as their beer salesman and tries to get them into this bootlegging business. And so eventually, Mike actually does find out that Tom, his brother's money doesn't come from politics. And it pretty much comes from bootlegging, and it pretty much comes from theft. And so then there's this, famous scene that comes up between Tom and Mike, where Tom says that, um, his success is more than just beer and blood. And so the situation between Mike and Tom, and that scene that came up when, Tom mentions to Mike that he's killing Germans, but then also, Tom's in this illegal business trying to sell alcohol and trying to distribute alcohol, but both of them kind of seem to realize that they're just trying to make ends meet. I really think that the audience had a lot to say about the scene between Mike and Tom because Mike was enlisted into the Marines. He did have to fight for his country. He did have to, defend his country and kill Nazis and kill people. But at the same time, Tom also had to sell alcohol even though it was illegal, but he had to do it for a living as well. So both Tom and Mike had points where they really needed to take care of their family and make ends meet, and that's really important to understand in this situation. And so I think that the audience is from the 30s is probably different than from the 50s, because a lot of people really didn't in the 30s didn't really approve of prohibition at the time as well. And it was such a divide for the country. While if you for us, for example, if we talked about it now, it would have been honestly silly if we had prohibition today. And so that's like something to think about. Another really important scene in the movie was the grapefruit scene. And so this was a scene where Tom, so James Cagney, actually smashes like half of a grapefruit into his girlfriend's face. And it was a really hard hit too. I mean, when I saw that scene, I was like shocked to see it, because but they also like got into a lot of fights too, and she would never like budge. She wouldn't even give an expression or anything. And so she was always having a grapefruit for breakfast, and he always wanted to put the grapefruit in her face just to get a reaction from her, and he finally did that. And I think it was also mainly just because of like he was under a lot of pressure too, especially since he was trying to make his business and trying to just start up, trying to make as much money as he can. And Tom was under a lot of pressure, especially with trying to hide from the cops and trying to make sure that no one turned him in or anything, that he was making enough money. But he wasn't getting the support he needed from his girlfriend. And so just getting an expression out of her, just getting something out of her, um, was something that he really needed. He could have done it another way. I mean, anyone would have agreed on that instead of just hitting your girlfriend with a grapefruit. I mean, that's just not okay. But that scene at the time also brought up, I guess, like a lot of familiarity, because, like, back then it wasn't as bad to do for a guy to do something to a girl, if that makes any sense. And so I know now we see it and we're like, that's totally abuse. Like, you should not do that to a girl, especially. But back then, back in like the 20s and 30s, it seemed kind of normal um, to be in a relationship like that as well. And so, or if you didn't get it your way, you took it physically. You took the physical abuse in some ways. Um, and also, I really think that she also didn't really approve of what he did. And so I think that was also another um, situation that Tom was going through, because Tom was trying to make money. He was trying to, build his career and everything, and she didn't approve of it. So a lot of people seem to think that she wasn't grateful for it, or she didn't appreciate him for doing that. Um, and so there's a lot of controversy with that. I think anyone that's interested in um, movie like gangster films or like mob films, especially if they love The Godfather, like you really should watch The Public Enemy, because it doesn't hide anything. It really tells the truth of like what or how life was for this group of people back in the 20s and 30s, and how they had to struggle and make a living as well. And it really does like have a lot of morals and ethics that you have to think about as well. Like, is it morally right to do this or kill a man because they did, something wrong that most of society would agree on that is wrong? But then also, is it right to take the law into your own hands, and is it right to, I guess, like play God, I suppose, because they were very religious at the time. So these are questions that the audience really have to think about in some ways. And in my opinion, I don't think you should take the law in your own hands, but at the same time, I understand why these men did it, and why these men, they were just providing for their family or making money for their family, trying to figure out ways to get around to support everyone. We also, family plays a huge role in this. Tom's mother did not agree with it as well, and Mike didn't either. And they went back and forth with it, but eventually Mike understood after, because he struggled when he came back from the Marines as well. So these are topics that the audience at that time probably questioned. And so 2 years later, after 1931, that was when Prohibition ended. So, and that's it. That's all I have to talk about. Thanks for listening.